Hey guys, this is Hayes with CheatSheetPros.com. Today we're going to take a look at the college football cheat sheet. I did do a small tutorial video last week, but I've since decided to redo the video because, as always, I'm tweaking with numbers and I found something a little different, so I kind of revamped it a little bit this week, so this will be updated. So as always, we have our main tab over here, which has our basic stats if you want to dig in and look at the schedules and everything. But the main tab that most people use is the scoreboard tab. So if they're not playing a Division II team and it's a lined football game like a Vegas line is out there, we're going to have it on this sheet. Over here on the far left, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see we've got the date and time of when the games are going to play, which usually go Thursday to Saturday or Thursday to Monday. Coming down here, we list the teams. You're going to notice something new in this column G, which we'll talk about. We have the ranking, and then this column with the percentage, it's kind of a behind the scenes multiplier to show the advantages based on like ranking, strength of schedule, some other various numbers. And this is one I kind of tweak a little bit each week. It's going to be a little bit more on the extreme side in the beginning, but I would rather have a game say, hey, we think they're going to win by 20 and the line's 14, because that's easier to look at than say, hey, the line's 14, they're going to win by 14.2 points. I can't really do a lot with that. So just keep an eye on this. The higher the percentage, the more vast of a difference. So we may see some crazy lines. Flipping down here, we did see some big ones. Let me take a look here. What is my score under? Like, for example, this Oregon State game. We've got it 54-12. So we have Oregon winning by 41.7 points. That's 6 points over the line, and the line is 35, so we do get some big ones. If you watch the first tutorial video, we did have a gap in there where if it was over a percentage, it just kind of X'd it out. I was like, that's no fun. I want a projection for every single game. And then this is just to point you in the right direction so you can go and take a look at it. So if there's an edge, the edge is the difference between our line and the Vegas line. So for example, we have this game by 6. Vegas has them by 2.5, so that's a difference of 3.5 points. And then up here you can see if the edge is more than 4.5 points, it's going to put the play over here. So this is just to kind of help me look down and see how they're doing, if I need to tweak something, if the favorites are hitting too much, if the dogs are hitting too much, and just get some more information. This here is our stat hub. So this has everything from the record, offensive rank and yards, defensive rank, yards, strength of schedule, points per game allowed, all that fun stuff. And then we've got the Vegas tab here, which basically shows what it opened at, the spread, the total. These always fluctuate. This is not live. So once I post it and update it, that's kind of what it is for the next 3 days. And then we have two models back here, which I have briefly went on. So this one is basically just the ESPN FPI. Now, I put a little bit of twist on there, but I pretty much tried to keep it the same as the ESPN FPI. I add a little bit, very small percentage up or down on the power rankings just to kind of make it a little bit different. But the FPI actually did really good last week, and it looks like there's a bunch of picks this week. So last week, and I even made a note up here, it was like 61.7%. I don't have the number in front of me, but it did really good. So the ESPN FPI is a solid model to follow, take a look at. But again, do your own research. College is ever changing, and yeah, it's hard to keep up with. This is the CheatSheetPros power model. This is new this year. So basically, I have a power ranking. So I was always curious, like in the background, all these big power rankings, you know, your spread is basically the difference between the two power rankings plus the home field advantage. It gives you a spread. It's usually pretty close to Vegas, but that's how a lot of cappers make their picks. If they're a professional capper, they have their own power rankings and then they make their own lines and compare them to Vegas and go back. So I wanted to do something like that this year. So I have a power ranking system in the background that I tweak a little bit. And I've got some differences where I kind of skew stuff up and down. So this is one that we're following. Last week, I think it was maybe 50%. It wasn't anything outstanding. So if you're not going to follow one, this is the one I'd say probably throw out the window. But it just gives you something else to look at. That way, if it matches with the ESPN FPI, that just gives you another feather in your cap to go through and take a look at. Like here, Like, so both of these have Liberty. So the ESPN FPI has Liberty by an edge of 6 points. And then we've got it a small edge, but we've got one in there. But it gives you just something else to look at. The main one that I'm going to be following is this one over here, because this one is so much fun. This is based off yardage, yards per point, and then we're factoring in these percentages and tweaking some of these numbers to come up with some new numbers. And I went back and I looked at about 100 games. It's not a picture perfect thing, but the majority of them, 70 to 80% are going to give you a pretty fair prediction that's within 6 points of the Vegas line one way or another. So I ran this in the background last week. I kind of checked it. I was pretty happy with it. And then flipping down through it, I like some of the plays that came out. But again, this is just to give you a guide, something to kind of go through and take a look at for your plays. Now, the FPI rank also is right here. So you can take a look at the ranking and see how they are on ESPN, for example, 116th versus 129th. So that gives you a ballpark. Hey, both teams suck. They're not very good. This over here, this is the new thing. So I'm going to leave this on here for a couple of weeks and check it. But one of the things, so you'll see these check mark plays. One of the things I noticed when I was doing some back testing over the first 2 weeks is that most of the spreads that are between 4 and 14, so I think it's set between like 3.5 and 14.5. So 4 to 14, that's when the model is most accurate. Also, when the percentage of the two teams is fairly close, which you can see here, this is 6%, 2%, 5%, 8%, 5%, 3%, 8%. So it has a fairly close percentage, most of them. This one's 10, that's a high one that we typically see. There's 7. This one's 20, so that's a little different. But most of the time, it's going to be a fairly closely ranked team as far as ranking, strength of schedule. It's going to have a low percentage difference. They're going to have a similar either schedule strength or rating or something to kind of put them in the same ballpark. And if it meets that, and it has a Vegas spread between 4 and 14, so these last week, 8 out of 9 of them hit. 8 out of 9 or 8 out of 10. It was really good, but I was checking everything. It could have been a fluke, 1 week thing. Do not get excited. But it's something I ran in the background and said, okay, if it meets the parameter as far as the percentage ranking, and then it meets the parameter of a line between 4 and 14, the ones that missed were lines over 14. So when it was minus 17, minus 20, minus 25, those just completely whiffed. So I was like, well, what if we narrow down the spread to 4 to 14, and then that's when the win rate skyrocketed. So, and this is basically just looking at efficiencies. It's not looking at yardages. It's looking at close teams, difference of efficiencies. It puts a factor in there. It compares it to Vegas. If it exceeds Vegas and it meets the parameters that I've set forth, we get this green little check over here. So this is one that I'll constantly be following and checking. Like one of the games I do like this week is Miami. And you can see our model likes Miami here. We like Miami in this model, and then we also got the check on Miami, so that's kind of exciting, which Florida looked terrible. Miami looks unreal right now, so that looks like a fun game to bet, and the spread's only a little over a touchdown. Some of these other games are a little bit different, so here you can see Illinois, we got the check on, but over here our yardage model has Indiana, and then we don't have anything for ESPN or our power rankings, so that's one where we're kind of different. So I'm just curious to see what happens. Is this going to be a close game? The spread's 4. So one thing is saying, hey, take Illinois plus 4. The other one's saying take Indiana minus 4. So my assumption is this is going to be a 6-point game. Either way, it's going to be fairly close, but I'm going to monitor it and see. If you look at the projection of the yardage, you can see Indiana is projected to put up 450 yards versus only 332 of Illinois. However, it's still not that far off. So the efficiency numbers are with Illinois in the background that you can't see, but yardage-wise, it's going to kick over here to Indiana. So plays like this are ones that I'm going to follow. Here we have like Oregon minus 35. We've got them winning by 41.7. Stuff like that. Take it with a grain of salt. On games like this, I typically do the race to props. So something that Oregon State's never going to score. Like, for example, race to 30 points or race to 35 points or race to 40, whatever DK has. That's usually what I do, because it's basically a total if Oregon's going to get there. Now it says race, but the other team that's a 40-point dog, they're never going to get to that number. So that's what I look for on the big spreads or the first half lines for them to come out strong. I do like Missouri this week. We have a minus 13.5. However, we have this check mark on South Carolina. So that had me scratching my head, but look at these yardages difference. 502 versus 239. That is vastly different. So our yardage model has this 40 to 14. So I'm real curious how this one turns out, which we know that the strength of schedule that MU's played is 102nd. It's not very good. They're outscoring opponents 47 to 20. So they could jump on this 2 touchdowns. But again, something we're going to follow and track. But for the majority of the time, the cheat sheet for college is going to look like this. I will tweak some of these numbers. I play with it a lot in the background after the games are done and kind of look at stuff. This model is going to stay the same. The ESPN one's not going to change. That's pretty steady Eddie. That's kind of your go-to. And those should be pretty close to the Vegas line. My yardage model is the most fun one. And again, take it with a grain of salt. College is fun. You'll have a team put up 700 yards one game, and then all of a sudden they're putting up 350. So it's kind of all over the place. Stat Hub is always fun to look at. Look at the offensive yardages. See what the two teams are doing. You can either look at the ranks or you can look at the yardages, whatever you want. We also have strength of schedule here. Like here you can see 56 versus 6. That's going to give you a little bit of an indication of strength of schedule. And then as always, we've got our power rankings model, which is new this year that we're kind of tweaking. It wasn't real great last week, but I'm going to follow it and keep making changes to it because that's how we get better. So anyways, I hope you guys have fun with this. This is the updated 2025 college football video. So now I'm going to work on getting some plays out for this week. Have a good day.